Hi everyone, welcome and thanks for attending. I'm Scott at Chief Architect, live from home as I would imagine most of you are. Today I'm going to share some of the tips that I use for my productivity, as well as some of the staff members' productivity tips that we use here in the office. Normally these presentations are done in front of live audience. I don't have that luxury today, and I'd like to encourage you to ask your questions either through the chat session or through unmuting your microphone and just raising your hand, and we'll try to get your questions incorporated. You'll find those settings in your GoToWebinar control panel. Our session will be recorded, and we'll try and share that after the session is finished. You may notice my occasional assistant here today, Maya. She's my 3-pound Maltese. And we've also got some Chief Architect staff members on the call today who will, one, keep an eye on me, and two, try to make sure that we're getting your questions answered as you may be chatting those in. So today, I've got the session broken up into 5 specific parts, and I'm going to try to cover parts 1, 2, and 3, command and control, 2D and 3D editing, as well as client sharing, and then we'll talk about our hidden gems. I have another session scheduled that will be covering saved plan views and default sets. So with that, let's go into the program and get started. Let's begin the session by looking at part 1, what I call command and control. As you're working at home, or for that matter when you go back into the offices, make sure you're working with 2 or more monitors. When you have your library browser, your project browser, maybe your active layer display, options, an elevation view, a 3D view, you can tear those off onto additional monitors and it gives you a lot more screen real estate. I highly suggest that you use at least 2 monitors while you're doing your work. The second point is to make sure you're using templates for new plans and layouts. You can take the last project that you worked on and use the save as template feature for both your plan and your layout. And you can continue to do that and build upon it as you complete each new project. If you look at our website and you search for video 116, I'll just bring that up real quickly. So you can search for video 116. You can also come down to our samples gallery. You'll find that underneath the user center samples gallery. This project for the bachelor view, you look at the how-to design videos. Video 116, if you watch the first 5 or so minutes of this project, it will talk about how to create template and layout plans for your project. This is one of the most productive things you can create, so you can always use those same things you typically do when you begin a project. So make sure you're taking advantage of creating templates for your plans and your layouts. When you're working, make sure that you're taking advantage of the active layer display options and the project browser. I'm going to go ahead and open mine. I open them and close them a lot during the video because I have limited screen space. You'll find these depending on which version you're using. I have a link to them off to the side of my menu over here. These tools allow you to quickly turn things on and off in the case of the active layer display options. If you come over and click on a cabinet, notice that it automatically filters those layers that you can turn on and off. When it's not selected, you have access to the entire set of layers. You can also change your layer set at the top and quickly change what those layers sets are that are active during your session. The next one is your project browser. On your project browser, this is a quick way to come in and navigate. I have a very simple plan open here. Navigate between different floors. You can open up multiple plan views just like you can open up multiple camera views. And the project browser is a quick way to navigate through your project. If I had a layout file, you can then move between different pages. These tools are very helpful as you're going through and working on your projects. Hotkeys and make custom hotkeys. Let's talk about that a little bit. Crosshairs. I've assigned a crosshair hotkey, the equal sign, so I can turn on my crosshairs. You'll find that tool, in my case, over on the far right hand side of my screen, and you can click it to turn it on and turn it off. Hotkeys are designed so it saves you repetitive tasks, and moving over to that menu system takes quite a bit of time. So I assigned a hotkey, in my case the equal sign, to turn on and turn off my crosshairs. Let's build a custom hotkey to turn on the active layer display set, which is over here. So I'm going to come into my tools menu, and you're going to find toolbars and hotkeys and customize hotkeys. And I'm just going to search for the name active. I'm going to come down. You can see that I actually already have it assigned. Let me just remove that for the time being. When you click inside the assign box, and I'm going to go ahead and type in and hold the Alt key down and A, you can see that it says Alt A, click assign. Now you can see that hotkey is assigned. If you clear out your search, you can see all of the hotkeys that are available to you. I mentioned my crosshairs that I've assigned. You can see that I've used the equal button. That's a common button that I find that is easy to use. We ship with a number of hotkeys available to you. If you scroll down, you can see all of these hotkeys. Maybe we can sort it based on the different hotkeys. You can always override this. The purpose of a hotkey and why we allow you to override it is to make it convenient for you. So if you decide you want to take advantage of reprogramming some of these hotkeys, feel free to click inside here and come in here and assign the hotkey that would work best for your work environment. And you can build those hotkeys. It's an easy way to do it. Now that I have that hotkey built to control the active layer display set, if I type in Alt A, notice that it closes. Let me close the other one so you can maybe see that a little better. Press Alt A, it opens it. Press Alt A, it closes it. It's a quick way to open or invoke a tool that you want using those hotkeys. Here's one that is maybe subjective. Turn off contextual menus. When you click on an object or right-click on an object, the contextual menu comes up, and for me to select that wall, I have to come up and click the select button. My preference, and I think it saves a click, is to turn those off. You'll find that in your preferences. I'm going to show you that, but I want to talk about the next one as well when we go into the preferences, and that's when you open dialogues to the last panel visited. Let's take a look at this wall cabinet and assume that you're doing something in this wall cabinet, maybe on the moldings, and you're adding a new molding in here, which I don't currently have, but you're doing something to add a molding on here. Go back in and you say, well, boy, I'd really like to go back into that cabinet and change that molding. And when you open the dialog, it goes back to the general panel. To get back to the moldings, you have to click on the moldings panel. Let's take a look at how you can make the two changes for the contextual menu and open dialogues to the last panel. In your preference settings, and preferences are global, meaning that any plan that you have open, it will affect. Defaults are local to a specific plan and are not transformed into other plans. So preferences are global. On the appearance panel, I'm going to turn off contextual menus. That's on the appearance panel. Then down on the general panel, you're going to see an option down here, save dialog size and position. The last option is to open dialogues to the last panel visited. When we go back into the wall cabinet, notice that it's now on the moldings panel, and I don't have to come down from the general panel to open that. The next thing is when I click on a cabinet and I right click on it, I no longer have that contextual menu that pops up. All of those tools are available down in the lower edit menu and I have access to them. Again, that's subjective. I think it saves a click, and I think it's about being fast. If you find it efficient, you can turn your contextual menus off as well. The control key and the command key, depending on if you're a PC or Mac, will override temporarily bumping and snapping. When you take this wall cabinet and you move it against the wall, it's bumping. You can turn off bumping and you can turn off snapping, but that takes a few extra keys. If you hold the control key down while you're moving this, you now have free-form control. Sometimes you may be placing objects on the other side of the wall as a temporary place because maybe you're going to use it, maybe you aren't. In that case, you could hold the control key down. I'm using a PC here. Pull it into the room. Once it's in the room, let go of it, and then you can bump it up to the wall. This temporary suspension of the bumping is a nice thing to be able to do, especially if I wanted to hold the control key down, slide it over, and position it in this area. It wouldn't be bumping to the, if I zoom in a little bit, it won't be bumping to the casing. So holding down the control key gives you a quick momentary suspension of bumping and snapping. Next, let's take a look at using the middle mouse for precise object movement. And again, this is on a PC. If you're on a Mac, you can use the left mouse and the command key. My wall cabinet is selected, and by using my middle mouse button, I can actually click on my middle mouse button, and I could actually move this cabinet exactly where I want it using the middle mouse button. So this is another way of moving and editing objects by using your mouse, and I'm using just the middle mouse button to do that. The center tool, the copy reflect, and center between two objects is something that I use all the time. The center tool, very easy to use. Click on a cabinet in this case. There's a center tool you'll find in the lower edit menu, center object. Click on the window. You see the visual indicator before you actually click. It will center it. Copy and reflect is a situation where you can move something specifically. If we were to take this wall cabinet and slide it quite close to the window, there is a distance between the cabinet and the casing. Maybe it's 5 or 6 inches. We'd have to take an elevation or run a dimension to actually figure it out. I want to take that wall cabinet and symmetrically copy it on the other side of the window and have the exact same dimension. While this cabinet is selected, I'm going to use the copy tool in my lower edit menu, copy. Then in my sub-edit menu, there is a reflect about. Highlight the window, click, and it will pull that cabinet. The distance between the window casing and the cabinet is exactly the same on both. That's using the copy and reflect tool. The next tool is to center between two objects. How does that work? Let's delete that cabinet. Let's suppose that we want to take this stool, this is a kitchen stool down here, and I want to center that in between these two objects. So you'll find this a helpful tool to be able to center something. Click on the stool, click on the center tool, center object. In the sub edit menu that comes up, far left hand corner of my screen, is the tool point to point center. When I click this tool and I click on this cabinet and this cabinet, it projects 2 points that I can actually center that stool on. Now I haven't clicked anything, but it's projecting 2 CAD points. You can move between these CAD points, and when you left click, I'll left click now, it centers it exactly between those two items. You can use this for cabinets, you can use it for CAD. In this case I used it for furnishing. This is a tool that can help you distribute and place objects, and it's called center between two objects. If you're following me and watching along, I am using X12. If you're using an older version, some of these features, the center between two objects, is something that we implemented beginning in version X12. Let's look at some things you can do with an alternative right click or using the Alt key. You can curve objects like CAD lines and walls and stairs. Here's a CAD line, and if I right click on this and pull it around or hold my Alt key and left click, you can curve this line. While doing that, you can also override bumping and snapping, and notice that instead of curving that line in 7.5 degree increments, it gives me free form flexibility. The wall tool, again, hold your Alt key down and curve the wall. Also hold your Control key down and it gives you fine flexibility over that edit. So you can either right click or hold your Alt key down to do that. If I zoom out a little bit and you look at the stair tool, there's curved stairs and straight stairs. Let's just draw some straight stairs. Again, hold your Alt key down and you can curve that stair by using that tool. I rarely actually use the curve stair tool to the right and left because of that flexibility. The next thing you can do is you can actually create stairs in the down direction. Typically when you draw your stairs, they draw up, and that's the correct way to do it. You draw them from the floor up to the next platform, and that's the best way to do it in Chief Architect. You may run into a situation where you only have one, and if I hold my Alt key down, one floor, you can actually draw those stairs. If you take a look at this image, actually I'll just open up the plan, you can see how I only have one floor on here. I'm using the perspective floor overview so you don't see the ceiling. But I wanted to not create a second floor, and I drew a set of stairs down because I wanted to show the stairwell in that plan. You can use the Alt key and draw those stairs in that manner, so you can draw them down on the main floor. The last one underneath right click is continuous draw walls or CAD lines. When you are creating a floor plan and you're using the wall tool, if I select my wall tool and I right click and drag, I can let go of the mouse basically and just click and create that shape of the room by using and starting my right click. Same way with the CAD line tool. If you're going to draw a series of lines, you can begin the operation by clicking your right key, letting go, and then you can just basically come down and create the shape that you want with your CAD, and you're still in that mode. Being able to stay in continuous draw mode can be a time-saving process. You notice when I was in that line mode, let's go back into line mode, you see my cursor changes from a pointer to this mode. A lot of times you want to get out of that mode. You can press escape on your keyboard. It will get you out of that mode. You can press the space bar to get out of that mode. Now when you're in this line drawing mode and you're drawing, again, you can press escape key to get out of it. You can also press the right mouse button and get out of that mode. It still leaves you in line drawing mode, but it allows you to basically do the same operation as escape. If I was drawing this line and I pressed escape, it leaves me in that mode and it won't actually draw the line. Now the last topic that I have in part 1 is using the wall, and this works for walls and CAD, using the same line handles for further drawing. Let's take a look at what that means. Let's assume that this wall is some unique wall and I want to continue drawing this and not worry about going up and selecting an exterior wall, figuring out if it's brick or a special cladding. At the very end of the wall is an additional diamond handle. You can use that and pull it down and continue drawing. The same works with a line. If you have a line, you can use the same edit handle. Could be that maybe you have a line and it's got some special properties on it. Maybe the line style is a dash style and you don't want to do the same process and draw another line, open it up and make it dash style. You can use the same type edit handle and continue that style of drawing. and that's called the same type handle for further drawing. Pause here and see if anybody has questions about any of those features before we move on to the second part of the productivity. How are we doing out there? A few hands are raised.
Looks like Tom has a question. I've unmuted his mic.
Hi, Tom.
Hi, I've been using Cheap Architect for a number of years. Isn't there a way to like draw a line? I want to draw another line. I can just do is there a click to redraw to redo that command again? Does that make sense?
Let me see if you can still see my screen here. I have a short line segment in the middle. So here's what I'm going to do to avoid using what I call cross-country movement, where you're drawing a line, you decide you're going to go back up and draw another line, and then you're doing something else and you decide you want to draw another line. One of the things that I do is I use hotkeys. And when you drop down your tools, most of our tools in many cases show the hotkey next to the tool. When I drop down the line, notice there's an L button here, an L button. I can press the L button on my keyboard and draw a line. If I'm doing something else, moving around, and I decide I need a line down here, if I press the L button, you may notice in my menu it highlights the line tool up above. I'm in line drawing mode. So I avoid going up to the menu and invoking that mode. I use hotkeys all the time. So Tom, I hope that answered your question for you.
So when I do the drop down method on draw a line,
Yeah.
I see the W.
Ah, okay. So older versions of the program use W for line, and I don't know if it was in X11 or X12, we changed that to an L. We kind of asked ourselves, what's W have to do with a line? And we said, probably nothing. So we switched it to the L button. And I'll show you how to remap that here in a second. But when we made,
yeah.
I think I know
the
answer, but when we switched that from the W shortcut to the L shortcut, I had a really hard time adjusting, and I think I know why in the early days they said it was W, because for those of us that are using two hands, one hand on the mouse, one hand maybe on the keyboard, the W was on this hand and the mouse is on this hand and allow you to do things simultaneously. And when we switched it to the L, it was a change, and I struggled for a long time. So if you do remap that to L, you may have withdrawals for a little bit.
Scott, Chris Kohler's been writing in some interesting questions and he'd like to ask you.
Hey, Chris.
Can you hear me?
I can.
So just workflow question. So new version, interiors. So I do my RCP, and then I'm now going to create some elevations. And I create the elevation, and I say, oops, I think I made a mistake somewhere, because I'm seeing something on the screen that doesn't make sense. Maybe it's an intersection of a roof line. Maybe it's in this particular case, below line 0, I'm seeing looks like an additional piece of foundation that extends below where it should be. So I now need to figure out where I made my mistake. So I'm trying to figure out an approach. Do I try to turn off layers so that the elevation is minimized and I start seeing it reveals kind of where my mistake was? Or for instance, if you get a file from a customer and they're saying, I'm having this problem, how do you attack, like, what do you when they say a cabinet's in the wrong place, like, what's the thought process?
So Chris,
do you try to minimize the view? Do you remove layers just to kind of see what's going on in the background?
Chris, if I understand your question, when you shoot an elevation
Yep.
and you're trying to determine if there are ancillary objects, maybe the foundation's on, maybe the platform's on, and you're trying to figure out, well, what are those things and how do I hide them?
How do I find out where I made the mistake and then I
Yeah.
can address it?
So here's what I do a lot of times. I may take simultaneously an elevation view and a 3D perspective view. And if I
Okay.
don't know what layer something's on, let's say I don't know what layer maybe my concrete footings are on or my stem wall is on, and I just don't know. I'll click on that view, and if I open up my layer display options, if I don't know what something's on, here's a picture of our mouse pad with all the shortcuts on it. I have no idea what layer that's on. If I tap on it, you can see that that's actually on a layer called CAD default. So when I'm trying to troubleshoot what layer's on or where the heck something is, I'll make sure that I can see it in a certain view. I'll tap on the object and I'll see what layer it's on. I'll then go over to the elevation view and make sure that layer is either turned on or turned off so I can isolate it. Then I actually build specific layer sets. So if I'm always taking an elevation view, I'll have an elevation view built for exteriors, and then I'll have an elevation view built for, let's say, interiors, kitchens and baths. And when I take a view for those, they're already set up to have those layers turned on and off. And I built that into my template plans and use save plan views, which is a topic here we're going to cover in a couple weeks. But I built those template views to try to isolate those things.
Okay. So again, approaching it from turning off some layers or selecting the errant piece of architecture and then focusing on that.
Yeah, and sometimes it takes a little bit of trial and error. Sometimes you can't see something because it's behind a wall. I'll even turn on the glass house view and make sure that, can I in fact see it, because maybe I buried it under the floor or behind a wall. And so I'll check that as a secondary as well.
Thank you.
Yeah. In part 2 of the productivity tips, I'm going to look at some of the 2D and 3D editing, as well as I added client sharing if many of you are working at home and you need to better engage your clients who may also be working at home. Let's begin by looking at copy and paste, in place, and hold position. Let's zoom out a little bit and take a look at this sort of a condition. If I have a wall and I want to copy that to another floor and have it exactly stack, I can copy that, Control C or Command C on the keyboard for Macs, go up to my attic level, maybe it's the second floor. You can then paste and hold position. You'll find that underneath your paste menu, paste, hold position. Also notice the shortcut key is typically always displayed for you. So let's go ahead and click that, and it will position that exactly in the same location. Let's go back down. Place a window inside of that wall. Copy the window, Control C, move up, edit, paste, hold position. It will exactly position that for you. Here's another example. I'm going to open up a existing layout template. Here is my layout template that I have several pages on. I like to stack my text on my border for each page. When you create your layout template, one way to do that, let's copy this text, Control C. I'm going to move to page 2. I already deleted the text out of there. Control Alt V, which is the shortcut for copy, paste, hold position, will exactly position that text in the same location as page 1. You can then open up that text and make the textual change for this page, which is my site plan. You could type that text in, That saves me a little bit of time if you're picky and you want that text to be exactly aligned with the other pages. Copy, paste, hold position is a very helpful tool. Let's go back into our plan, close this. We'll talk about using the copy and paste in place here in just a minute, where that comes in useful. Let's talk about using array copy. You can use this to manage CAD, electrical, ceilings, other things you may be working on. Let's just slide over to the side here. I'm going to use the circle tool and I'm going to just draw a simple little circle. In this case, let's see what we have here roughly as a dimension. Let's maybe make that a little bit smaller. I'm going to take this circle and I'm going to use an array copy and I'm going to fill something in down here. Think of using this to fill a room with a bunch of lights. Let's use the array copy, select the object, lower edit toolbar, use the multiple copy tool, come over and define the interval, multiple copy interval, and I'm going to set this to be 18 inches in the primary and then 24 inches in the secondary. Notice there's other, this is for general objects, there's trusses, rafters, joists, wall studs you can use. There's also an evenly distribute. Let's take a look at using the 18 by 24. Move your cursor over the CAD object. In this case, maybe you can just visualize what I'm going to do here. I'm going to hold my right mouse button down and drag to the right. I'm going to let go of my mouse completely. So I'm not touching my mouse at all. At this point, I'm only going to pull the mouse down. No buttons are clicked. Pulling it down, pulling it down, pulling it down. When I've reached the limit where I want the copy to end, I'm now going to left click. I call that my left click, right click. Array copy, you can use it for electrical, you can use it for tray ceilings. It works for a lot of different things. If you take a look at this wine cabinet on the left hand side of my screen, I used a polyline solid in the front of the cabinet. I drew a circle, converted it to a hole, and did that array copy in an elevation view. It's a tool you can use to create a number of unique designs. Let me look at a few edit mode shortcuts. C, X, and F. Concentric, X for resize, F for filleting. Let's slide over a little bit off to the side. This CAD object in here might represent a site plan, and you might want to have a setback at a predefined distance. Could also be a countertop and you want to create an inset with it with a predefined distance from the edge. I talked about copy and paste in place earlier, but I didn't show it to you. I'm going to highlight this CAD object. I'm going to use this tool, copy in the lower edit menu, paste in place. Again, if you're using paste and hold in place, that positions it right over the top. Your menu, if you're using X11 and older, may look a little bit different. Copy, paste, hold position might have been a tool next to the copy tool. Now I've created a copy of this. There's a concentric option, and to make this very specific, I'll go into my preferences. I'm going to define what that concentric number is. Underneath my preferences, let's come down, and you're going to find this underneath Edit, Behaviors, Concentric, and I'm going to type in 36 inches. This is a faster approach than changing your edit mode to concentric, in my opinion. So I've only typed in a number of 36 inches. Let's go back, select that object we made a copy of. On the corner, I'm going to press the letter C on my keyboard. I'm holding the letter C down. Now I'm going to grab my mouse, I'm going to left click, and I'm going to pull it in, release when it snaps once, and now it's exactly 36 inches. If we turn on our temporary dimensions, it's exactly 36 inches in. If that were very large and you wanted to do several concentric copies of it, you could do that and it would pop in 3-inch increments. Sorry, in 36-inch. It would pop in those 36-inch increments. So that's holding the letter C down. Let's slide over. Let's draw a simple CAD object over here. You can use the letter X to resize this CAD box. Tap on the edge of it, hold the X down on your keyboard, and it will concentrically resize using the X. Works on an image too. Click on this image of our mouse pad from our additional products. Hold the X down and you can resize that to any size that you want. That's the X. The C is a fillet. The F is a fillet. Click on the edge, hold the F down. It will fillet that edge. C for concentric copy, X for resizing an image, and F for the fillet. C, X, and F. How about pan and orbit? I'm panning around my screen now by holding my middle mouse button down and panning. You'll find the pan tool over on the, in my case, my right edit menu. You can click pan and move it around. A lot of times I like to just grab it and pan around by pressing the middle mouse button down. That works in 3D as well. What about in 3D where you can orbit in a view? Let's take and open up a plan and take a look at this in 3D. Well, in 3D, I can hold my middle mouse button down and pan. I can also hold the Alt key down and the middle mouse button and rotate around. Here's a good use case. Let's assume that we want to paint something on the front of the house with this material from the fireplace. I'm going to use the object eyedropper and I'm going to click on that. I'm now ready to paint. I can't see the front of the house. Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to hold the Alt key down, the middle mouse button. I'm going to rotate around. I'm going to zoom in, and now I'm going to paint that material on the front of the house. That's a pretty good looking door. You can use that, again, just hold your Alt key down. I'm still in Material Painter mode, and that allows me to paint that material and not leave that mode of the Material Painter. So using the pan mode to pan around, or the Alt and middle mouse button, is a easy way to still retain the tool you're in, yet be able to move around your plan. Two new things that I've added to productivity under part 2 is for client sharing. Being able to export your renders as 360, send them to your clients. It's more difficult for you maybe to meet with them in person. 360 renders are great. 3D viewer models may be even better. As a chief architect customer, you know in a 3D view you can move around a model. Let's take a look at both of these things. If I go back over into this floor plan and I take a 3D view of the kitchen. Let me just use my camera here, point and click at the kitchen. In this view, you can export this as a 360 render. File, export, the normal 2D export of a picture, and then there's the 360 export. When you click on this option, you can define the width and the height of the image. These 360 images are 4 images wide by 2 images high. You may want to think about making these a little larger than you normally would push out a single flat image. When you save it to the cloud file, the program will ask you to log in. And once that finishes, you can go out to your online account that you have with Chief Architect. This brings me right into my 360 panorama renders. You can make that public. And once you've made it public, you can then click on the share option. There's 3 links you can get to, or 3 tabs you can get to. A direct link, you can copy that, text it to somebody. Phones all have a built-in 360 viewer. You could email this to somebody. Since it's on your cloud account, we build a 360 viewer, and the key to that is that same link you would have gotten in the direct link. You can also give this to your web person. They can embed it on the website. And if we just open up our 360 page, here's an example of different 360 renders that would be represented when you want to put those on your web page. When you click and load one of these, you'll get a little navigation indication on it, and then these are full 360 navigable. 360 renders are a great way to include your client and give them more information, especially now that they may be working at home. The next one is our 3D viewer. And let me just scroll down to the bottom of the page. It's maybe easier to show you by looking at the 3D viewer. The 3D viewer allows you to export your entire model. And if you take a look at how this works, let me just play this video here toward the top of the screen, and let's take a look at the way your client would interact. It will work on an iPad. It will work on any Google mobile device. Let's click this play button and I'll just show you real quickly. So I'll turn that sound off. There's a cross-section viewer that you can use. The client can then actually go into the rooms. We have thumbsticks on the mobile devices. There's a height adjustment. There's a walk mode. There's a gyro, and we'll let this go for just a second here. This gives you a description of what those buttons do. When you turn on the background camera, if you're out at the job site, it would actually show you realistically what that looks like. In this case, the gyro's on. You're just moving the tablet around. And then the last one is the physical walk mode, where you can actually physically walk through the model. So using the 3D viewer is an easy way to engage your clients, especially as they're at home. And you can export those 3D viewer models inside the program through export, 3D viewer model. You can also export saved cameras. So if you have a larger plan, you could export any saved cameras, allow them to go into the master bedroom, the kitchen, the living area, and help provide some navigation for those. So take a look at using the 3D viewer. You can learn a little bit more on that web page that I was just on for Chief Architect. It looks like we have a couple of questions here. Let me pause a little bit and make sure we get to the questions that may be things that we've covered so far.
Scott, Leah's been waiting for a while to ask a question.
Well, let's put her on. Hi,
Okay.
Leah.
Hi, I just had a comment when you were doing the line tool.
Yeah.
Not really a question, but I've noticed if you tap the escape key,
Yeah.
it toggles you back to the tool you just used.
Oh.
So if you're drawing the line
Yeah.
and you hit your space bar to get off of it, it goes to your cursor, hit escape and it takes you back to the same tool.
Nice.
So just a helpful hint.
Nice. Thanks for sharing that.
Thanks.
And we have Ryan Gardner with some questions.
Hi, Ryan.
Hey there, it's Scott. A quick question. So I do mostly residential architectural, and so I do majority with trusses. So I use that array copy quite often, 24-inch off centers. And when it's a complex roof system, a lot of times you have to do that multiple copy every 24 inches, in 10 different directions and different angles and whatnot.
Yeah.
Is there any kind of shortcut to go through it instead of having to hit your multiple copy and then hit, the multiple copy, and then hit the cent intervals and then this okay because it's already set in there at 24 inches? Is there a way to just jump right into multiple copy and drag?
If you're always doing trusses, and
That's just one example.
yeah, if right now my multiple copy interval is set at 24 by 36, I believe that's what we put it at. Sorry, 18 by 24. Once that's set, you don't have to change it. And by the way, that's for general objects. Your trusses are 24
already set at
and
24.
24. So you don't actually have to click this twice. Once you've put the dimensions in there, you're set to go and you don't have to actually re-invoke that.
Right, you just had to hit enter and it'll automatically go.
In this case,
Is there a way to bypass that?
what's that?
So is there a way to bypass that?
In this case, if I just want to use it right now, I can use the multiple copy tool, move my cursor over it, and I'm done. I don't actually have to click that other secondary tool to set the interval.
Okay, can you show me that again? Sorry, there was
So the
something that popped up
interval,
on top of the screen.
so the interval is already defined in this case,
Right.
18 by 24. And it's already defined for trusses at 24 by 24. If you're not planning on changing that for the next operation, you never have to go back into that again. So click on the object, click on the multiple copy tool, move your cursor over it, and then you're already in that mode.
Ah, okay. That's what I was missing. I was thinking you still had to open it up.
Once you've put the interval in, you don't ever have to touch it again.
Unless you want to change it. Gotcha.
Exactly. If you want to change it to another number, then you'll want to open it.
Great. That's very helpful. Thank you.
You bet.
Would you like to answer some more questions right now, Scott?
Yeah, let's take some more
Yeah.
questions. If we don't get to everything on here, then, by the way, let me, as long as I'm in here, pan and orbit. You see how I'm moving my screen around? What I'm not doing is I'm not going over to my pan mode, which is clear over on the right-hand side. I'm just pressing my center mouse button to pan. That also works in 3D. What do we have for questions?
Anne Harvey was wondering if you could show one more time how you curve a wall or a line.
Oh, sure.
I've opened up your mic if you have additional questions, Anne.
Hi, Anne. Are you there?
We can go on to somebody else and come back to Anne if you'd like.
Sure. While you're finding the next person, Anne, if you're able to hear me, the alternate key, press the Alt key, and then I left click. You can curve something. And simultaneously, if you press the Control key down, it will override bumping and snapping, so you can be a lot more precise and curve it in any increment versus the 7.5 degrees. How are we doing on questions?
Carla Del Cid has a question.
Hi,
Are
Carla.
you there, Carla?
Hi,
Hi.
can you hear me?
I can.
Okay. So, is there any form where you can copy and paste like a layout you've done on a completely new page, or do we have to do that all over again, like draw the whole thing again?
Is your question, let's go over here. Let me open up a layout. You've sent something to layout and you want to copy that elevation view or that plan view to another page. Is that accurate?
Yeah, something. Yeah, yeah.
Okay. So if I were to open up, let me grab a file here. Here we go. The way you do that, Carla, is you grab the item that you want, and let's go down here to, let's open up our project browser. And for this, let's figure out what page we have. So if I go to the last page in this layout sheet, and I want to take and make a copy of something on the layout sheet, here's the easiest way to do that. Let's assume that I take this wall elevation and I want to copy it. So you can press the copy key, which is in the lower edit menu, or Control C, Command C. Go to the next page. In this case, it's probably blank. Edit, paste, hold position, or Control Alt V. and it will paste it on that page.
All right. Thank you.
Is that it?
Yeah, it was that.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Okay. More questions out there?
Norman James is back. He was here last week. He has a question.
Norman, what time is it in New Zealand?
It is currently 7:52, so 8 minutes to 8 on Good Friday,
Well, great. You're a day ahead of everybody.
as usual.
How can we help?
Hey, the copy and hold position,
Yeah.
I obviously, I've got that all sussed with the layout. The trouble I had the other day is I've started a new plan for a project that I'm doing, and I've put on the grid lines on my working plan view. Now, when I try and go down a floor to my basement level, or my foundation level, I want to show those grid lines as well, but I can't get them to come up.
I don't have a lot of grid lines. I call them guidelines in my drawing here, but I have just a couple. I have a plan that has more of them. So if you want to take this line that's dissecting the house and you want to pull that down into the basement, is that what you're after?
Yes.
So copy it, Control C, move down to the basement, edit, paste, hold position, or Control Alt V, and you can paste it in there.
Okay, Control Alt V.
Yeah, and you can see those shortcuts when you, let's grab that copy. You can see these shortcuts when you mouse over the tool. You're going to see the Control Alt V.
Okay, got it.
Now, one of the things was that it, Norman?
Yep, that's fine. I was trying various ways, and for some reason, I was just using the keys down rather than the hotkeys.
Yeah.
Because I've had the question answered, which was real quick. Is I've recently started using hotkeys just to try and get my performance value up, and I printed out a whole lot, but it appears all my hotkeys don't match the defaults you were talking about. So like move camera left was my L button. So
Yeah.
they've answered that about how to reset the hotkeys back to what the out of box settings are.
Right. I a lot of times will change my hotkeys around, and that was one of the things I did want to make sure that I covered. When you set up hotkeys, one of the things I do a lot is here's the temporary dimensions, and if you tap on a wall, you get temporary dimensions. I like to toggle those on and off. I press the letter T on the keyboard. Question is, if you want to build a hotkey, let's say you open up the project browser or active layer display sets all the time. So that's a good way, if you take a look here, using custom hotkeys. Crosshairs is another one that I use. I turn those on and off all the time. There's a tool over here you can turn them on and off, but I built a hotkey to change those around. The easiest way to build a hotkey is come underneath your tools, hotkeys, customize hotkeys, and here's where you're going to get a list of all of the things. A gentleman earlier said he was using an earlier version of the program, and he was looking for the line tool. And if you wanted to reprogram your line tool, you could come down here and click Assign. For my crosshairs, I built a key for equals, so all you have to do is come down here, press the equals key, hit Assign, and it will build it. And you can override them. If I wanted to create a hotkey to bring up this active layer display set, we call it the Aldo, let's say Alt A. So let's come in here, do a search for active layer display tools, and let's clear that out. All I have to do is click inside the box, press Alt-A, click Assign. If it's already assigned, the program will say, hey, it's already assigned. Maybe you're okay with that. I find some of the hotkeys that are assigned, I never use them, and I find it's more convenient for me. Don't feel bad about overriding whatever hotkeys we have. If you find it's something that's simple for you, that's why we allow you to program it. With Alt-A in place, I can come in here, turn on that hotkey, and turn on the active layer display set on and off by just pressing Alt-A. So you see how that toggles in.
Yep.
Another thing to show is to customize your toolbars. I use the selection mode tool. Click on the toolbar, and you can either right click on the toolbar and say customize toolbars. You can also find that same tool underneath the menu system, customize toolbars. When you do this, you can customize your toolbars for different views. So beware which view you're in. One of the tools that I use all the time is for the selection modes. So I'm going to pull that. See, I'm just going to pull that over onto my sidebar. So I'm going to do that. The other thing, as long as I'm in here, if you use something in your design process all the time, let's say you're a kitchen and bath designer and you build a tall cabinet with a double oven and a warming drawer, you save that in your library, you can map that to a tool and put it on your toolbar. For one of the houses, let's go in, I built a custom mailbox. And let's say every time you build a house, you want to put a mailbox in there. Probably a bad example. But let's take a look. Let's take a look and just come in here, and it's called Place Library Item. So type in the word place for search, LIB for library item. I'm going to pull that up onto my toolbar, place it up there. Let's close this. Now, when I click on this the first time, it's going to ask me what you'd like to map it to. I'm going to go into my library, and I built this custom mailbox that looks like the house. So I just took a 3D view and mapped that down as a symbol. So here's my mailbox. You can choose which image you want to use. Boom. And now I can place a mailbox by clicking that tool and placing it. The Marquee Select tool, I use this all the time. So right now, Marquee Select is contained in objects, right? So if you click and drag, everything is contained. If you change your selection mode to intersected and you click and drag, it grabs everything that your marquee selection is intersecting, and then by center. I'm typically changing it between those selection modes all the time. So don't be afraid of customizing your toolbars, mapping specific tools or library items into your toolbar. In part 3 for productivity tips, I call this some hidden gems. Some of these things may not be as obvious as others. So let's kind of go through the list here and take a look. I'm going to just slide off to the side. Using the tab key to move a precise amount. Let's say you're drawing a wall and you're drawing and drawing and drawing. You could press the tab key and very specifically enter the coordinates of that wall. If you want it to be exactly 5 feet, you could enter in 5 feet and it's exact. The way that works is when you're drawing something out, you're drawing. Before you release your left mouse button, press the tab key. There's an option to make that polar. If you're moving in a down direction, use the tab key while you're drawing out your objects and it may save you a little bit of time. Let's talk about door placement. When you go and place a door and you move over a wall, before you click you get a ghost outline. And I'm sure most of you are aware if you just slide to one side of the wall, it will flip the door one way or the other. Before you click in place, you can hold the left mouse button down, and then you can slide along that wall left and right to switch which swing side or hinge side that door is going to have. Temporary dimensions, location and style. We had a question about how you can use dimensions for remodeling. Let's slide over to this plan and take a look at dimensions. If I tap on the dimensions right now and you zoom in, that dimension is going to the outside of that wall. If you're a remodeler and you want the dimension to go to the inside of the wall, you could come into your default settings, over to dimensions, on temporary dimensions. I could change that to the wall surface, locate both sides, and if there were openings such as a door or window, it would also locate the wall surface. Once I've done that, and now I tap on the wall, zoom out a little bit so you can see that, it's going to the wall surface now. And you may want to use this in remodel conditions, maybe your kitchen and bath designer. If you're in the kitchen and bath plan mode, your dimensions, your temporary dimensions should already be doing that. Let's switch our plan view over to kitchen and bath and let's just confirm. Tap on that. Again, this is using a different dimension default, so it's now showing in inches, but it is going to the wall surface. So you can control the way those temporary dimensions work. Let's switch that back to our working view here. Custom toolbar tools and selection modes. You can customize your toolbars and add tools that you may use frequently. One of those tools that I use a lot is a selection mode. Let's take a look at what that means. There are different ways you can select things. Maybe things that are contained in things or touched in things. You notice how I drew that selection box? It got the text up here, and it probably got the door as well. I may not want that mode, and I can change the way my selection modes work. It's a tool that I use all the time, so I add it to my toolbar. Let's go through the process and add that to the toolbar. And we'll just come up here. I'm going to right click on my toolbar. I'm going to come down to Customize Toolbars, and I'm going to search for the word marquee. So you see this marquee, and there's 3 different modes that it makes up, and I want the selector mode. Now when you customize your toolbars, make sure you can customize it in different ways. I want to do this in my plan view. I'm going to take that tool, I'm going to drag it up, put it on my toolbar. You could put it here. You could also put it down on the far right hand side is where I actually end up doing it. Now when I change my mode, let's drop that down. Notice that it's currently intersected. That's why it selected both text objects as well as the door. If I change that to be contained in, and I click and drag a marquee, it has to be contained in. It's only going to select those. Versus you switch that back to intersected and you draw a marquee that kind of looks like this. Anything it touches, it will select. So depending on what you're doing, you can toggle that around and adjust it. I use it a lot in my process, and if you find it handy, you can also add that on there. Here's one. If you use an object in your design process a lot, you can assign a library item to a toolbar button and put it on your toolbar. Maybe you're a kitchen and bath designer. You've created a tall cabinet with a double oven and a warming drawer. You've added it to your library. You could put that on your toolbar and then click and place it. Let's go through the steps. Right click on my toolbar, Customize Toolbars. Let's make sure that we're in the plan view. I'm going to use the word, search for the word place, library. Pull that up onto my toolbar. We'll close. The first time you use this, the program will ask you, what would you like to assign this to? Let's browse out to the library. I'm going to come over to my user catalog. Here's something that I built on my recent project. It was a mailbox. You can kind of see I made a symbol out of my house so that it matched the house. You can choose which icon. Let's go ahead and just select that automatic icon. Now when I click that button, I can come over here and put a mailbox in my design. If it's something you use a lot, maybe it's something as simple as a kitchen stool, you could map that to a library button and put it up there on your toolbar. You can modify these in 3D, 2D, elevation view. So there's lots of ways you can customize your toolbars. Replace from library. Let's scroll up here a little bit. Here's a stool in my design. Let's go ahead and take a 3D view and just see what we have here in this design. Okay, so a little bit crazy. We only have a couple walls. Replace from library allows you to select an object, in this case the stool in the kitchen. You can come down into your lower edit menu. There's a tool called Replace from Library. It's going to ask you where you want to replace. Maybe there are several items in a room or on a floor. We'll go ahead and just select the one object. Go out to the library. I'm going to come down. I'm going to grab one of my favorite stools that I use quite a bit. Swap it out, and that works in a very quick manner. Again, if you have a complete kitchen with several stools in there, it will maintain the orientation if you've twisted those around a little bit. That's called Replace from Library. Take advantage of using that. When you want to swap things out, you can also swap an entire kitchen island out if you've blocked it and saved kitchen islands into your library. Let me switch gears a little bit. Let's talk about roof joins and intersection points. In the case that I have over here, I have a 3 and 12 and a 6 and 12. You can join this roof by using the join tool in your edit menu. These are manual roof planes that I've drawn. And click and it will join those two roof planes. If you look at this in an elevation view, let's just shoot an elevation over here. You can see the two different pitched roofs. Using that join tool allows you to figure out where those two items join. This roof plane off to the right hand side might be something for a covered porch. It may be difficult to figure out where does that exactly intersect this other roof. Here's what you can do. Let's go back into the floor plan view. This roof plane we want to intersect into this larger roof plane. Here's how we can do that and have the program project where that's going to intersect. In your preferences, as you open up your preferences, let's come over to architectural. There's a setting for roofs that says automatically place roof intersection points. I'm going to turn that on. Now I'm going to click on the smaller roof plane for the porch. I'm going to come up and I'm going to click on the larger roof plane for the house. There's a CAD point that is superimposed on this roof plane. That's where those two are going to intersect. I can click on this roof, pull it up. I'll just slide my cursor over till it picks up the snap on that CAD point. Click. And if we go back over into the section view, you can see that we have exactly intersected those two roofs. Using that tool helps you project those points. You can clean up those CAD points by using the tool in your toolbar, delete temporary points and clean it up. You can also turn that off if you're doing roof editing and you don't want that on to create CAD points all over the place. Here's one that I like to do. It's math in dialogues, and I'm going to illustrate it by using the transform and replicate tool. Let's take a look at this picture of a plot that would have been from an assessor, and you want to scale that and create a simple plot for the design you're working on. Let's just grab that and slide it over. Let's take a copy of that. And I'm just going to slide that over off to the side so we have a little bit of room to manipulate it. As you zoom in, you can see dimensions on the different sides. And I'm just going to use the line tool. By the way, when you use the line tool, notice there's a shortcut. In the current version I'm using L. Go ahead and press the letter L. And then let's just turn on our crosshairs. So I'm just going to draw a line that's the distance of that side plot at 155 feet. Let's open up that line and see what the distance is for it. So this line in here is currently 94 inches. And if I want to scale that image very quickly, let's take a look at this. And again, I'm going to use this to demonstrate math in dialogues. To make that easy, let's change the number style temporarily. This is in decimal feet. Let's change our numbers into decimal feet. I'll switch that back because I don't like using that a lot. Decimal feet. So I'm going to take this number, 7.33 feet, and I'm going to divide that. Let's take 155.69 divide. Now I'm going to press the Tab key. That gives us a ratio, 19.8 and some change. I'm going to copy that. So I did math in the dialog. I'm now going to press the cancel or the escape button because I don't want to change anything. I just wanted the ratio. I'm going to highlight the line, which is already selected, and the image. I'm going to use the Transform Replicate tool in my lower edit. Click on that. I'm going to resize this. I'm going to paste that value in, get rid of the foot sign at the end. Click OK. This gets quite large. Let's fill our screen. Let's pull it over so we can actually see what's going on. I've rescaled that, and let's just double check. Let's open up that line. You can see that it's 155.69. So I now know that I've scaled this plot line, and if I want to trace over that with the line tool, I can now easily do that and get a very quick representation. Using math in dialogues allows you to quickly resize things or allows you to use basic math operations inside the dialogue. Here's another tool that I like to do, point-to-point resize. Let's resize this down to some unknown ratio. This is a picture of the lot. And once you've imported that picture in the lot, you can use this point-to-point resize. Let's use point-to-point resize. I'm going to come up here, maybe easier with my crosshairs on, and I'm just going to roughly click. At this point, the program will ask me, well, what is the desired vertical distance between those 2 points? Well, we know it's 155.69. Let's go ahead and type that in, 155.69. You can see that that line that we drew that we already knew was 155, it's pretty much exactly the same step. Either way, you can do that. The point-to-point resize, I believe that was introduced into X12, allows you to maybe save a step using that same method. Let's take a look where we're at on here. So math in dialogues, we just did point-to-point resize using the line tool for temporary measurements. A lot of times what I may do, there is a tool called the tape measure, and you can come in here roughly and measure things out. Maybe difficult to read that on the screen because we're zoomed out so far since that's a large dimension. Sometimes what I'll do is I'll use the line tool, L on the keyboard, and I'm just going to click and drag, and before I release, I'm going to look down in my status bar. And if you look down in my status bar, it says 156.11 inches. If I hit the escape key, I actually don't draw the line. So it's a quick way to get a measurement without me going up to the tool, selecting the tool, and invoking it. So a lot of times I'll just use the line tool, come over here, draw a line, look at the status bar, and say, that's about how long it is. So the last thing is start and end indicators for walls and lines. If you're doing any CAD editing and you wanted to take and figure out, well, I want to take this line segment, let's open it up. I want to take that selected line and change the length from 15 feet, and I want to figure out what I want to lock, the start or end. Well, which one's the start and which one's the end? We don't know because we don't remember how we drew it. you can turn that on in your preferences. So let's go back into the preferences, and you're going to find that setting underneath the Edit, Show Start and End Indicators. When we click back on here, zoom in, you can now see the start and the end indicator. And when you go in and decide what you want that dimension is, you can then determine which one you want it to lock. I'm going to stick around here and make sure that we answer questions. If you have anything that you'd like to ask, maybe I covered it in the session, maybe it's something that you wished I would have covered. I didn't get through quite as much of the information. If you find this useful, what I'll do is finish the presentation and talk about the rest of these items in the subsequent productivity. If you find that a helpful event when we send out the survey, just let us know. So we'll open up the session here for just random Q&A, whether I covered it on the session or you just have questions you'd like to answer.
Scott, Reza Maher's been waiting a while to ask her question.
Hi, Reza.
Hi, Scott. How are you? Can you hear me?
I'm great. I was taking a drink of water.
All right.
How can we do it? Where are you calling from today?
I'm in Virginia.
Okay. Welcome.
Thank you. Scott, I'm actually new to this software. I'm wondering, because I'm working in the design build company, most of the time we're going to the homes and then measuring from inside the walls. So if I try to do with the chief architect, it's always from exterior walls. So I'm trying to start inside and give it the right dimension. I don't like, actually, I'm working with the AutoCAD too. So I don't like it to do it later, the dimension. I like to have it the same time.
Reza, if I understand your question right, when you're doing your as-builts, you like to see the dimensions go to the inside of the wall?
From the beginning that you start to draw, I want to start from inside the wall, not from outside. My cursor should start from inside the wall, you know?
Yeah. Okay, so you can control your dimension defaults. You can control what's on my screen right now are temporary dimensions. Temporary dimensions can be made to go to the inside of the wall. Right now, if you zoom in, they're going to the outside of the wall.
Right.
So step one is you can look at building your temporary dimensions underneath your default settings. And if I come down to my temporary dimensions and I say locate the wall surface, locate both wall sides, and for openings, doors and windows, locate the wall surface. Now when I tap on a dimension, that's going to the surface. That's your temporary dimension. The other dimension that you can change is for your automatic dimensions. Let me switch my plan view. I don't know, this is kind of a crazy plan that I have set up just for random things. But if I were to switch this, let's go into the kitchen and bath view because I think my dimensions are probably easier to do that. That turns off the layers for the wall. If I tap inside this room, let's put in a window and a door so that it may show a little easier. If I tap inside this room, the dimension default that's set up here will go to the inside of the wall. And if you zoom in here, let's just pull this dimension down. It's going to the inside surface of that wall. And by using the kitchen and bath plan view set, let's open that up and just explore why did that work. So let's click Edit Active View. Underneath my defaults, so there's selected defaults, our dimensions are going using this dimension default called NKBA dimensions. If you click Edit on that, one of the things that is on there is for the locate objects. The reason that's working is because inside of this dimension default, it says wall surfaces. Much like that temporary dimension, it's going to the wall surfaces. It's also, if you wanted to dimension you can control how it's going to do the openings, whether it's going to the casing, if you're doing as-builts, depending on how you want to measure that. And you can change this to be specific based on what sort of work you're doing. Does that help?
Yeah, I tried that too. It didn't it didn't work somehow because I starting to draw an interior wall to.
So it will work on interior or exterior walls. It doesn't care.
Mm-hmm.
But you're going to want it. What version and what product are you using, Raja?
12.
And are you using Premiere?
Yes.
So if you switch your plan view
Mm-hmm.
to kitchen and bath,
Okay.
that plan view will change your dimension defaults when you
Oh, I
switch
see.
that
So
view.
even if you start to draw a wall, it's gonna start from gypsum wallboard, or it's gonna start from exterior wall.
When you're using this plan view, the dimension defaults are using those kitchen and bath dimensions we just opened,
Uh-huh.
and it will be applying those standards as you do your dimensioning.
I see. I'm
So
trying.
if I have another wall in here, right? I have another
Mm-hmm.
wall in here. And now when I run my interior dimension, it's going to be going to the surface because my dimension defaults, and it's also going to be in inches. Because my dimension default settings, again, if I click Edit Active View and we look at that, it's using this dimension default. We ship, I probably have more in this plan than I need, but we ship with several. If I were to change this, let's go to the floor plan view. And I click inside, or I click automatic dimensions. In this case, it's going to be going to the outside. And you can verify what's going on because in the selected defaults, that plan view changed your dimension default to this 1/4 inch. And if you
Mm-hmm.
click on edit here, well, it's going to the wall dimension layer.
I
That's
see.
why.
Mm-hmm.
You can override any of these and force it. So if you wanted your dimensions to be feet and inches, you could switch this to surfaces. And then if we rerun this, let's go ahead and rerun that. Let's see if that works. I'd have to change my automatic exterior dimensions. There's another tool for automatic exterior dimensions, but that's how it's being controlled.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. All right. Thank you so much.
Hope that helps.
Thank you. Yeah, I will try.
Okay, how are we doing on questions out there?
We
So,
have another question. Oh,
I've kind of officially ended the presentation for productivity tips. I got through part 1 and part 2. I'm taking questions, any random questions you want to ask, and feel free to stick around and we'll try to answer as many as we can. So who do we have here, Carrie?
we have Rick Thirlby. He has a
Oh,
question.
oh, Rick, how are you doing?
All right, how you doing, Scott?
Pretty good.
Good. Hey, with the copy and array, when you did it, you were able to move it in the X direction and it arrayed it, and then you pulled in the Y direction and it copied that way. But when I do it, it'll only do it in one or the other.
Uh-huh.
How are you getting it to do both without having to go back into the command and reselect everything?
Sure. Let's look at it in this example. Let's create a coffered ceiling in here. And I'm just going to go through and let's make a tray ceiling in here. Yep. And let's resize that guy. So in this case, I created a tray ceiling for the room.
Okay.
48 by 24. And if I want to fill this room with a tray, let's go ahead and set our multiple copy interval. And since that's 48 inches, let's just make it 60 inches in that direction. And then we'll make it 36 inches in the other direction. So we won't get too many, but we'll get some. So I've defined the primary and the secondary.
Okay.
Rick, are you using a PC or a Mac?
PC.
Okay. It works slightly different on a PC. So if you look up multiple copy and you're on a Mac, it works slightly different with using your keys. Now that that interval is selected and I move my mouse over this tray ceiling object, you see my cursor change. Here's what I do. I hold my right mouse button down and I click to the right until I feel like it's enough of those objects. I then totally release the mouse. I'm not touching it at all. I pull it down, again, not touching any of the clicking buttons. I pull it down and then left click. I call it the right click, left click. So let me describe this as I'm doing it. Holding the right mouse button down, hold and go down to the right, release it. Again, I'm not touching the mouse in any way. I'm just going to pull the mouse down. And when I'm finished, I now left click.
Okay. I was using the left button instead of the right. That was my problem.
Yeah.
Okay. Then the other question was, when you're doing the offset and I forget what other things, you would select on something and then you would hit C, was it, to be able to offset it? You had shortcuts, and it seems like the shortcuts aren't working.
Okay, so let's see what shortcut. Was it the concentric resize?
Yeah, that and also the X, or I mean the F.
Okay. So for concentric resize, one of the things that I first did was inside my preferences underneath behaviors is I defined a number to jump. It could be the default in your setting is 0. I think mine was when I first opened this up. So underneath your preferences, edit behaviors, put a value in here.
Okay.
Then I made a copy of this object that we were pretending was my site plan. You use the
Okay.
copy and paste hold position. So at this point, move your cursor over the corner, hold the letter C, then left click and drag. And in theory, if I turn on my temporary dimensions, that should be 36 inches all the way around.
Okay.
And then the other tool is to hold the X down when you have that. And let's see if I press the tab key simultaneously, I might be able to actually type in an exact number, 12 inches. Nah, that doesn't work because it's, yeah. But the X key allows you to then concentrically resize it. It works on images too. So press the X key down, it will concentrically resize.
So do you have to select something before you hit the X, or just?
Yeah, select it. It's
Okay.
selected, right? At that point, press the X, then hold your left mouse button down and you can click and drag.
Okay. Yeah, see.
Hey,
when I
Rick,
hit
if
it
that's not
doesn't.
working for you, I'm conducting a full 2-day class next week. I'm going to have you in there, and we'll get you all hooked up.
Okay, yeah, because I mean, when I hit X, nothing happens.
Uh, well, do it like you mean it. So click on the object, then move your mouse over it. But before you touch your mouse and left click, I'm pressing the letter X down. I can screen share it with you later if you'd like me to look at it. Press the X on the keyboard, and then in theory it should work. But it could be a function of maybe how your mouse is set up or something else if it doesn't happen to work for you.
Yeah, for some reason the X and the C, it's not responding at all.
Okay.
So, okay.
Well, maybe we can look at that offline for you.
Okay. I appreciate it.
Okay. Thanks a lot, Rick. Good to hear from you.
Good to hear from you. Thanks. Bye.
Scott, Monica has a question.
Hi, Monica.
Hi, how are you?
I'm great.
Good. So we do a lot of custom cabinetry, and one thing that we struggle with is getting dimensions of the full cabinet. So let's just say we have a 36-inch cabinet, and we have 1.5-inch rails on both sides, and then the 33-inch drawer in the middle. Right now, I can't dimension those, so I draw CAD lines
Right.
to create those dimensions. Is
Right.
there any easier way to do that?
Yeah, we don't currently dimension to the face items within the cabinet box. In your case where you have a couple of rails and then the door and you want to dimension it, right now using a CAD line is probably about the best you can do in an elevation view.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
But thanks for asking. I'll make sure that I write that down as a request. And by the way, if you're on the session and there are particular things, we do have a email that we monitor a lot called suggestions@chiefarchitect.com. Please send those in because we go through and rank our features to try to make sure that we're being responsive to things that you'd like to see in the software.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Okay, have a great day.
You too.
Scott, Tom Hines has another question.
Hi, Tom.
Hey, Scott, a quick question. Where do I find that little hotkey menu you keep showing on there?
So if you want to get to hotkeys, you can go to the Tools menu. Underneath
Right, I
Tools.
know that.
Yeah. Oh,
But that little Chief Architect hotkey little image.
Oh, this guy? Sure. If
right in the center of your drawing.
Yeah. So there's a couple ways you can do that. One, that's our mouse pad that we have. You can buy those from our additional products on the website. But if you wanted to generate or just take a picture of that image, let's bring up the website here real quickly. And scroll down to add-on products. And you want to click on that mouse pad. You can click on that and copy that image.
Ah, okay.
Yeah. And then there's also a way where you can print off all of the hotkeys. I haven't done that in a while here. Let's see, hotkeys, create hotkey list. That will allow you to export a list, and you can print that if you want to. I think that prints it out as maybe a PDF or a HTML web type page, and then you can print that and have it handy near your computer.
So where do I go to see to buy that mouse pad? I'm on the site. I see.
Oh yeah,
products.
sure. If you go to the bottom of our website underneath add-on products, very bottom.
Scott, I've added a link to the chat area.
Oh, okay, great. And then on the add-on products, it's toward the bottom? Or
I see it.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Thank you very much, Scott. This has been wonderful.
Oh, good.
And, it's just wonderful to learn the basics because it all starts with little steps. Thanks.
Sure.
Carla has another question.
Hi, Carla.
Hi. I have a question about the general framing in the walls. Is that the only way you can get a wall to be specifically framed like how you want it? Or do you have to like change it manually?
If I grab this wall right here and I want to build the framing for it, you can build the framing for that specific object. Let's go ahead and turn that layer on. Let me just check something here. Once that framing is built, you can open up the wall detail on that, right? And that's our automatic framing. You can control what your stud spacing is. You can also manually edit this framing. So if you have a structural engineer and we go in here and we want to copy, let's just use this simple copy tool. You can draw new items in here. So if I need a couple of studs or a post in here, let's go ahead and turn that on. You can modify that. There's blocking in here, wall bridging in here that you can modify in your framing. So you can manually frame these different walls. Let's see if I have one that's a little bit more sophisticated here. Is that kind of answer your question about framing?
Yeah, it does. Thank you.
And if you look at, if I were to open up like this particular plan here, I've done a little bit of post and beam work where I've added in the structure within that framing. That's going all the way through, so you're seeing additional framing members. But it allows you to go in and customize the framing on a per object basis. So use the manual framing tool to get you started, and then you can use the manual framing tool to then further customize those objects.
All right. Thank you.
You bet.
Very much.
Scott, Norman James has another question.
Hey, Norman.
Hey, Scott. Hey, thanks very much for this morning for you and your team. But I'm doing this project, like I said, and I've started my foundations. Now, typically, New Zealand, a lot of our foundations are a beam sitting on a post. Now, I've gone to the foundation and I've taken the post with footing and I've placed it in the plan. Now, if I select the post, I can change it to a 125 square post. When I select the footing and I open it, it gives me an option, obviously, for the thickness, which is generated by elevation at the top and bottom. And I can change it to a round foundation or square. How do I change the value of that actual foundation? So when I've placed it, it's come in at a 600 diameter or 600 square. But if I want like a 250 diameter or say a 400 square footing, how would I change that? And then also, because I've already done my plan with all these posts, is there an easy way to sort of change those posts to a post with footing?
Okay, so if you're initially placing your posts in your design, I opened up kind of one here that has a foundation view. Let's see what I have here and see if I can switch that layer set over. Because I think I have a small, it's not a complete foundation like you might see. And let's switch our layer set over here. if I have one for the foundation. Here we go. Yep. Okay. So I don't have the post showing. But I've got a couple of items in here for some footings and a post. Let's switch that over to 3D framing with foundation. That should show those posts. And I think if you want to set your posts initially to have a default that you would use, so you see this simple little post with footing in here?
Yep.
And I think if you go into your default settings, let's see if that's underneath our framing. I'm not sure if you can see my screen yet. On the, I assume it takes longer to get to New Zealand.
No, that's all right. I've found it, and I've actually opened up with a post, so it's given me that width of 400 and the thickness under the default.
Yeah, so then you can also control the way your footing comes in, whether it's round or square.
Awesome.
And then when you, and then save that in, if that's something you do all the time, save that into your template plan. And then every time you do a new plan, it will have those values in there for you.
Sorry, can you just repeat that?
If that value that you use for your footings and your posts, if that's something you typically always use, then save that value. So open up your framing defaults in your template plan, save that value in your template plan, and then when you begin new plans, it will have that value in there. And if you,
Okay.
do you use your own template plan?
At the moment, I'm sort of just going with what was shipped because I've started this new project and obviously trying to sort of stay up to date with it. So I haven't gotten onto those template plans yet.
Really, the number one thing for productivity is to use a template plan for plans and layouts. If you want to take your last plan that you created, you can actually save that as a template plan. I've done a video, and if you search for video 116, it talks about how to create a plan template and a plan layout. It goes on to further do the floor plan layout, but if you watch the first 5 minutes of that video, it will talk about how to create a template plan. And it's one of the most useful things that you can create for yourself, because if you're using our out-of-the-box template plan, chances are what you're doing in your area, whether it's New Zealand or maybe in North Carolina, it's not going to be the same everywhere. And changing things in your template so when you begin drawing an exterior wall, it has what you typically use. Obviously, you're going to have client-specific needs, but those template plans will then have things that you typically always have. And if you save it into a template plan, I kind of use the analogy that a template plan is like when you use, let's say, a word processor and you start typing and the font is a specific font. Most people probably never change that, but you could. So when you start typing, it may always have a blueprint font or an Arial font. Chief Architect works the same way. Every time you use a particular tool, you can set it to have defaults. And defaults are plan specific, where preferences are site-wide. Preferences are example like my crosshair is on, and no matter what I do, that's a preference that's on all plans. But default settings are specific to plans. So if you were to change, your general cabinets, you could change your general cabinets or your base cabinets. And in this case, you could customize your cabinet, and then every time you do a new plan, it would have those default settings. I would encourage everybody out there, if you're not using templates, look into that, do a little investigation. This video, if you go to our website, search video 116, just come in here, 116. This is actually using a video from this seminar. If you go down to the samples gallery, this plan right here is the most recent one done in X12. The how-to design videos, video 116 is the second video. It talks about creating templates for plans and layouts. Watch the first 5 minutes of that video. I think it will help start you in the direction of being able to use templates.
Awesome. And then obviously this plan that I've done is because I couldn't sort out my foundation. I just used the standard post. Is there any way I can swap those out without actually specifically having to make a new post and drag them in onto those locations?
I think if you have a post, and let's see if I can place one here easily. So if I place a post, let's go ahead and turn that on. Yes. We use the array copy and we just kind of create, we use that array copy. I don't know what the value is, but we'll set some in here. We'll just do it in this direction. So let's say you have a series of posts and you want to change the size of all of those posts, right?
Yep.
Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to check that new selection mode and make sure that I've got it contained. I'm going to draw a marquee around just the posts. Double click to open them up. And then if you wanted to change the post size, let's say that you use it at, we'll just use 12. And then we grab the footings, you could do the exact same thing. Does that make sense?
Yep. So I'm okay with that, and I've put those in, so that was all right. But on my plan, I currently have just used a post without the footing.
Yeah.
So if I wanted to add that footing to the post, can I change it from just a straight post to a post with footing?
So here's let's say that I don't have a footing. You could draw that footing yourself individually.
Yep.
And then you could use your multiple copy tool.
Okay, cool.
Of course, my footings are different than my framing, but then you could use that multiple copy tool, set the interval exactly the same as your framing, and then you've got your footings.
All right, cool. All right, thanks so much, Scott. Thanks,
You
team.
bet. Okay, so we're just taking a few questions here. If you're still on the line with us and you want to ask a question, make sure you raise your hand and we'll try and do our best here to get them answered.
Hi, Scott. Paul has a question.
Hi, Scott. You just showed an example of using the array copy command in the horizontal and vertical axis. Is there any way, like say if we had like a circular shape, like say a 36-inch diameter circle, and we wanted to put like say 5 posts in that circle, is there any way that we can do it where the 5 posts will be equally spaced?
Well, that's a good question. It depends on how you want those 5 posts spaced. If you just want 5 posts in here, let's grab this post and pull it down in here. You can use the multiple copy tool. Let's see what you said, a dimension of about 36 inches. That's pretty big. Let's make it 60 inches, if I can do that. The multiple copy tool can be used. Let's take a look at this. Let's look at the multiple copy tool. And at the bottom of your multiple copy is an evenly distribute when dragging. And if I change that, you said 5 posts, so I'll make a copy of 4 of those. and I pull that out, I can use that evenly distribute to push those posts inside that circle.
Mm-hmm.
Does that answer your question, Paul?
No, I mean, if I wanted to have them equally spaced along the circle.
Along the circle, so around
Yeah.
the edge.
Yes, uh-huh.
Yeah, so that's going to be, okay, I'm going to bring in the big guns here. Adrian, if you're out there, do you have a suggestion if we wanted to take those posts and spread them around that circle?
I was hoping you wouldn't call on me because I wasn't 100% sure what I would do.
Only the hard
I
questions.
wonder, I think if you could do distribute along path, maybe would be the answer. I'm looking at the transform replicate tools too to see if there's an obvious way to do it there, but I haven't figured one out quite yet.
Let's see here. If I convert that, polyline distribution path. Okay, let's see if this works. So I converted that circle to what's called a distribution path. And if we take the object and let's see, do I have a post? Okay, we'll just use this as an example. And you said evenly distribute 5 copies. Let's see if that works. Look at that.
Wow, that's what I'm looking for.
Awesome.
I just have one more question, Scott.
Okay.
If I want to draw a line tangent to that circle, I've tried using the tangent command, but it doesn't quite do what I want it to do. It'll draw the line, on the circle, but if I want to draw it on an angle, like say if I want to draw it by one of the posts towards the bottom, will it draw it on that angle?
So you want the line to draw perpendicular to that post?
Yes. Okay.
I
Now how did you
think,
do that?
yeah, I think sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. That make tangent line, if you have, let's say, let's draw a line in here, put a break in the middle of it. I'm just going to put a break right in the center of it. And I curve the 2 line segments. The make tangent tool, let's kind of put it like that. There's a make tangent tool. Where did that pop up? That popped up on my other screen and I can't see it. Hang on just a second. Where'd it go? Okay, that's popping up on one of my monitors. I can't see. So that's kind of made to set and make that line tangent when you use that tangent tool.
Mm-hmm.
It won't necessarily draw a tangent in this case where your line came in, but you can use your snaps to pick up the snap so that it comes in tangent, if that helps.
Yes.
Okay, Carrie, do we have any other questions out there?
We do have a couple more questions, but before you get to that, we had a lot of people writing in about saved plan views, and I was wondering if you could just let everybody know about the upcoming webinars.
Sure. So somebody asked about the upcoming webinars. Dimension tips we're going to cover next week, and Adrian actually is going to cover those. So that was next Thursday at noon, and we actually have a 2-day kitchen and bath class next week. That's a paid event, but that's 2 days. And then in 2 weeks from today, we're going to go back into the productivity tips specifically, we're going to look at saved plan views, layer sets, and default sets. And if you want to learn more about those productivity tips and saved plan views, I'll kind of give you a sneak peek if you want to do a little bit of homework. Let me just toggle back here. If you want to go to the website and search for the Save Plan View video, that's a new video, 2421, or search Save Plan Views. Also related to that, a little more advanced, you can search for Default Sets, video 240, and you can learn more about those two particular subject areas on Save Plan Views and Default Sets. So make sure to take a look at our schedule. We'll be looking at putting together more sessions Thursday at noon for a while, at least while we're still working at home here, so that we can use that time to help everybody become more productive in how they use Chief Architect.
Thank you, Scott. Charles Butler chatted in a question, and Phil was gonna read that out for you.
Hi, Scott. Charles was just asking if we could review the marquee selection modes when you hold shift to select objects, and maybe we could also review your preferences, how you can have them selecting objects that are fully contained within your marquee or just intersected objects.
Yeah, okay. So the question about the marquee selection modes. One of them was I added the tool for marquee selection modes. It's on my far bottom right-hand side of the screen. And I end up changing the marquee selection mode a lot, whether it's intersected in objects or contained in objects, depending on what sort of edit operation that I'm going to be doing. Right now, the selection mode is contained in objects. When that mode is enabled, zoom out here a little bit, and you draw a marquee around everything, everything contained in that marquee selection is selected. You can kind of see what that is in my active layer display set options. If you change that to intersected, in that case, anything that I draw and touches my marquee select will select all of those objects. And again, you can see those selection items that show up here in my layer display options. I customize my toolbar just simply by right-clicking on it, customize toolbars, and that tool, again, make sure that you're in your correct view, was called, if you type in the word marquee, here are the selection modes. I simply drug that up and put it on my toolbar. In this case, I put it down here on my toolbar, but I now have it in two different places. Okay, more questions out there?
Scott, Chris Kohler has another question.
Hi, Chris.
Sorry, quick thing. Can you just open up a camera view of what you got there?
Okay, might be a mess, but
just bring it out.
Let's maybe switch over here.
Great.
Okay.
Can you rename that?
Can I name this camera?
Can you rename that one?
So what I'm going to do is click Save Active View. And then you could come in here and call it, Foundation.
Okay.
Was that what you were after?
I was thinking that I would right-click on that and I would rename it.
Okay. I like to name my cameras because then when you go into your plan and you're looking at your cameras, currently I'm on floor 0, and you look at overviews, you name those cameras, and it's easy to then retrieve those items out of those cameras. Here's the one that we just currently named. If you double click and open up those cameras, it makes it more obvious on which camera you have, especially if you've saved several cameras.
So I'm thinking of this as a page, you're thinking of it as a camera. That was my problem.
Good question. Sometimes we at Chief Architect are very close to it, and it's not as obvious to us as it maybe should be.
Okay, so again, I'm naming a camera and I can recall that camera. I am not naming this particular display page, and hence I can't rename it.
You can rename it. So right now I have this rear overview open.
Yeah, call it rear test.
So there's two ways you can rename it. Click on it over here.
Oh, but it's got to be in the project, then it reflects in the project browser.
So I'm over in the project browser, so I've renamed it there. You can also rename it by coming up to your edit active view. And again, it depends on how your menu is set up. My edit active view has
On default.
has a little camera here, and you can rename it right in here. Either way, I like to use the project browser.
Repeat that. Could you repeat that one more time?
Edit active view.
Yep.
You can come up and rename it right in here.
Okay.
You can also change different properties about your camera, show shadows. You see that's on.
Got it.
Once you've named it, it will then show up over in your project browser. Saved plan views work the exact same way. Saved plan views, you can open up multiple views simultaneously, just like you can open up multiple 3D views.
Got it. Okay. Thank you so much. Appreciate your time today.
You bet. Carrie, do we have anybody else out there with questions?
We don't have anyone else with their hands raised. If anybody has any questions, just click the button.
Okay.
Oh, now we have some. Gloria, go ahead.
Can you hear me?
Hi, Gloria.
Hey, how are you, Scott?
I'm good.
I try to be the mistress of 3D renderings, and currently I'm having to create a JPEG and drag it in. If I just send it to the layout, send to layout, it comes in really small.
Okay.
So it would be a lot easier though if I could just send it to the layout.
Yeah, well, you can do that. Let me close a couple of these things that I have open here. Well, I got a lot of stuff open. And let's make sure that I understand your question. Okay, framing. Okay, so here's a layout sheet. Now let's go to a blank one and we'll send that 3D view out. Let's go to page 24. Pull that over to my other monitor. So I have a blank page open on this layout sheet. When you're on a camera view and you send to layout, so come down, file, send to layout.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we said we were on page 23, was that right?
Mm-hmm.
Current screen, update always. Okay, a couple options. Let's just accept the defaults here. It's giving me a warning because I'm not in the same folder. That's okay. So here it is on the page, right? One of the shortcuts that I talked about was the X key to resize it. So click on the image, go into the lower edit corner, press the X, and I can make it bigger.
Okay.
Now,
all right.
If you take a look at my title sheet here. Oh, this is not the completed one. Where are you? Let's close that. No. Let's go to see if this is okay. If you look at my completed layout here, this rendering actually is ray trace, but some of my renderings on some of these pages in here are not ray traced. Let's go to, okay, well, that may not be true. I don't like sending my renders to the layout like we just did, because I think the issue that you pointed out is it looks pixelated. Is that what you
Yeah,
described?
the quality isn't so good.
And
Yeah.
and I find that you get better quality if you take your image, you go File, Export,
Yeah, that's what I do.
and then here's the key to that. You can now make this quite large, because if you're sending this to a 24 by 36 or 11 by 17 sheet of paper, you're going to want a pretty large image so that it doesn't pixelate.
Mm-hmm.
So you're going to get a better, I think you're going to get a better result if you export your renders and then drag them into your layout sheet.
Yeah, that's what I have figured out. But I just think that's something they should work on, because that takes a
Okay.
lot of time.
Okay, sure.
You know? I mean, and then every time I have a change, now I've got to do it all over again and then drag it in, you know?
So when you send it out to layout through the method that I showed here just a minute ago, one of the options would be to maybe define the resolution. So file, send a layout, and maybe you get a diagram like is on my screen that says, how big would you like it? And maybe that would help with the quality on the layout sheet.
When you do the send to layout method.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I'm making a note of that. If I can find a pen that writes here. There we go. Where are you calling from today, Gloria?
South Florida.
Oh, sounds warm.
Yeah, it was really warm today.
Well, thanks for your question. Was there anything else?
No, thank you, Scott. I appreciate it.
Okay, thanks a lot.
Bye.
Scott, Charles Butler has a question about Marquee Select.
Okay. Hi, Carol.
Charles?
Oh, Charles. Are you there, Charles?
He was having trouble with his mic earlier, so that may be the case.
Okay. Well, if you're out there, Charles, make sure that you can email sales or chat in your question if you're still online. Okay, a couple more questions while we're still here.
Norman, I saw your hand was raised. Did you have another question?
Yeah, I just wanted Scott to run through that distribution on path, but I think I've found it, and I'm just trying to put a selected plant. Yeah, I've actually found it. It was just when you draw that circle, how to make it a distribution on path.
Yeah,
Oh.
I think there was a couple people who wanted that reviewed, if you could do that.
Yeah, I closed
Scott, can I also interject?
Sure.
And maybe easier method is using the transform replicate tools, and you can do copy and rotate about the current point as a second option for array copying.
Oh. To repeat what we did earlier, the question that Paul had asked earlier was, how could I distribute an object, and I think he said a post, around the circle, and he had a specific number, and I think he said 5. What I did was I drew a circle. I took that circle and I used the tool, it's in the lower edit menu, called Convert Polyline. From this point, you can choose that it's a polyline distribution path. Once it's a distribution path, you can then browse out and find an item, maybe a plant, maybe a post. If it's a framing post, you may have to add that post to your library, but let's just type in the word post. If I can type, post. Find a post, and now you can distribute it. You can come in here and specify how many you want in there, and then it will spread those out along that circle.
That's awesome.
Okay, How are we doing on questions out there, Carrie?
I don't see anyone else with questions. If anyone does have some, please raise your hand and we can get to the last ones here. Reja does have another question.
Yeah, Reja.
Hi, Rick. Hi, Scott.
Oh, hi.
I'm wondering, I'm wondering, is any faster way to do the rendering? It takes too long to render a model.
Okay, so rendering takes a long time. How can it be faster? What computer are you using?
I'm using XPS Dell, and graphic card is good. Everything actually is very good, but it takes too long.
Is it a desktop or laptop?
Desktop.
Okay. And it's got a reasonably fast processor and those kinds of things?
Yeah, it's i7. It's i7, I think the 7th generation.
Okay. When you say rendering, is it specific to ray trace?
Yes.
Yeah, I don't have a good magic solution. Ray trace rendering is a function of, actually it's not of your video card, it's of your CPU. So having the fastest CPU, ray trace rendering only uses your CPU. And it's also a function if how many surfaces you have, how many lights you have on. So minimizing those things, sometimes I know people use SketchUp symbols. I used a SketchUp symbol once for a water pot filler, and it had like 100,000 surfaces, which is crazy for a pot filler. Each time you add surfaces, all of those things add up, and trying to make sure that you're minimizing some of those things and minimizing the number of lights is really about the only good suggestion I have. Also, sometimes the size. Let's see if I have, yeah. I usually start super small when I do my ray trace. And I like to make sure, I started at like 400 pixels wide when you create the ray trace assistant. I'll do it really pretty small. When it looks good small, I might go up a little bit, let it run. And then when I'm happy with it, I'll just let it run overnight, maybe longer, depending on what's going on.
Yeah.
I don't
It's like
have a magic bullet for you, though.
Okay, so I was thinking to upgrade my graphic card, but doesn't look like I don't need to.
Yeah, ray tracing will not use your graphic card. Ray trace, regular rendering, the standard rendering that we use, uses your graphics card GPU. Ray trace rendering uses your CPU, so having the fastest possible CPU for ray tracing is probably going to be your best bet for speeding it up.
So actually, i7 is the latest. I'm not
Well,
sure.
I think they have an i9, and
really?
Of course I don't follow that too terribly closely, but I've got a pretty fast machine at work that runs circles around my laptop, so I kind of stopped ray tracing on my laptop. But CPU is going to help for sure.
I don't need to update RAM.
Having good good and fast memory is always a favorable thing with your computer, but your CPU is very important.
Oh, I see. All right. Thank you so much.
You bet.
Appreciate that.
How are we doing
Charles,
out there?
is your mic working, Charles?
I hope so. Can you hear me?
Hey.
Charles has a question.
All right,
Thanks,
Charles.
Scott. Charles in Tampa, Florida.
Ah, South Florida again.
Yes, sir. I had the question about the Marquee Select.
Okay.
You know, I wear those buttons out all day long.
Uh-huh.
I was wondering, would it be possible to change the software a bit so you could use the direction of your rectangle to select the mode? If you select from right to left, it would be crossing mode. If you selected from left to right, it would be containment mode. Did you follow that?
Yeah, I'm just thinking through that. I was trying to figure out if you could put a hotkey together for that.
But that, you know, simply the
Yeah,
direction of the rectangle would
right.
dictate the mode you're in.
Could be too that you could hold down the Alt key. I wonder if that changes it. Yeah.
I never tried that, but so using the Alt key to alter the.
It doesn't seem to matter, but
No.
I've written that down.
Thank you very much.
You bet. Thank you. Thanks so much for attending. We're going to be back next Thursday at noon. We're going to be talking about dimensioning. The following week, we'll be back on the subject of productivity tips. We'll pick up where we left off, and have a great day. Remember that we do have other learning resources out there, other webinars, on-demand classes. We do one-on-one training where we screen share. I mentioned a few videos. We have a lot of videos out there, built-in support articles, and Chief Talk. Thanks a lot for attending, and I hope you have a safe and wonderful day.